I never imagined I'd find myself recounting this tale, but here we are. For the past 5 years, I've resided in the serene neighborhood of Maplewood Grove, a suburban haven characterized by its pristine lawns, amicable neighbors, and a community pool that remains impeccably maintained. However, this idyllic setting is marred by one significant drawback: our homeowners association HOA. More precisely, the autocratic reign of our HOA president, Linda Morrison. Linda moved into Maplewood Grove 3 years ago and swiftly campaigned for a position on the HOA board. Within half a year, she had adeptly navigated her way to the presidency. That marked the onset of our collective woes. Previously reasonable HOA regulations morphed into Linda's personal manifesto. The palette for acceptable mailbox colors dwindled from 6 to a mere 2, unsurprisingly, mirroring the hue of her own mailbox. Holiday decorations required a 14-day prior approval, and her Sunday morning grass hide inspections became the stuff of neighborhood legend. For the most part, I managed to stay off Linda's radar. As a firefighter, my demanding schedule often kept me away during her routine neighborhood patrols. I ensured my lawn was meticulously maintained, and every external aspect of my home, from paint to mailbox to welcome mat, adhered to Linda's stringent standards. I believed I was in the clear. I was mistaken. The trouble began last month when I decided to enhance my home's fire safety measures. Given my profession, I'm acutely aware of how swiftly house fires can escalate. I invested in a comprehensive system: smoke detectors in every room, carbon monoxide detectors, strategically placed fire extinguishers, and even a fire escape ladder for the second-floor bedroom. Additionally, I installed a small lockbox near my front door containing a house key for emergency responders, a common practice among firefighters. This lockbox, discreet and unassuming in its black design, was mounted beside my front door. It was barely noticeable unless one was actively searching for it. But Linda had an eagle eye for such violations. While on a 24-hour shift at the fire station, I received an email from the HOA titled "Violation Notice, Unauthorized Exterior Modification." The message, penned by Linda herself, cited a specific section of our community guidelines: no modifications to the exterior of any residence may be made without prior written approval of the HOA board. The notice demanded the removal of the lockbox within 48 hours or face a daily fine of $50. I promptly replied, explaining the lockbox's purpose as a critical safety measure linked to my profession, and requested retroactive approval. Linda's response was curt and unyielding: denied. Remove immediately. Upon returning home the next morning, I was greeted by a glaring orange violation sticker plastered over my peephole. It took considerable effort and a generous amount of adhesive remover to eliminate it without harming the paint. Linda's pettiness knew no bounds. Determined to resolve the matter amicably, I compiled a formal request detailing the lockbox's significance. I included endorsements from the fire department advocating for such devices and photographs illustrating its unobtrusive nature. I submitted this comprehensive package to the HOA with a polite yet firm plea for reconsideration. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived, a tangible testament to Linda's resolve. The single-page missive read, "Request denied due to aesthetic concerns and security risks. Remove immediately or daily fines will commence." It bore Linda's elaborate signature: Linda Morrison, President of Maplewood Grove Homeowners Association, Chairperson of Neighborhood Beautification Committee, Guardian of Community Standards. The grandiosity was almost comical. Frustrated but not defeated, I resolved to present my case in person at the upcoming HOA meeting. These gatherings were typically monthly affairs held at our community center. However, upon checking the schedule, I discovered the next meeting had been conveniently rescheduled to a Wednesday at 1 p.m., a time when most working residents, myself included, couldn't attend. How convenient. Undeterred, I arranged time off work to be present. Arriving at the meeting, I found only Linda and 2 other board members, both elderly and seemingly under Linda's sway. I articulated my case calmly, emphasizing the broader safety benefits for the community. Linda's impatience was palpable. She tapped her fingernails rhythmically on the table before declaring, "The decision has been made. Your request is denied. This matter is closed." One board member appeared uncomfortable but remained silent. As I exited, Linda's parting words echoed ominously: "I'll be conducting a compliance check tomorrow at noon. That box better be gone, or the fines start immediately." Her tone dripped with smug satisfaction. Seeking counsel, I contacted a lawyer friend who scrutinized our HOA covenant. He unearthed a pertinent clause: While exterior modifications required approval, there was a clear exemption for safety and security devices of reasonable size and appearance. He advised me to send another email citing this exemption and to stand firm. That evening, I dispatched the email, quoting the exact language from the covenant and reiterating the lockbox's qualification as a safety device. Linda's retort was swift and dismissive. Your interpretation is incorrect. The board determines what qualifies for exemptions. Decision final. The following day, duty called, and I was stationed at the firehouse during Linda's so-called compliance check. Returning home the next morning, an unsettling sight awaited me. The lockbox was gone. Not just removed, but forcibly pried off, leaving unsightly scratch marks on the siding. Reviewing my doorbell camera footage, disbelief gave way to anger. The video captured Linda approaching my door armed with a screwdriver and a small crowbar. She labored for nearly 15 minutes, detaching the lockbox and damaging my property in the process, before departing triumphantly with her ill-gotten prize. But the violations didn't end there. My security system logs indicated unauthorized entry into my home during my absence. A thorough check revealed the extent of Linda's audacity. Every fire extinguisher was missing, the fire escape ladder had vanished from my bedroom, and several smoke detectors had been dismantled, leaving exposed wires. This transcended mere trespassing or theft. Linda had willfully endangered my safety and that of my household. As a firefighter, I've witnessed the devastating consequences of inadequate fire preparedness. Linda's actions were not just intrusive, they were perilous. I contacted the non-emergency police line to report the incident. An officer arrived promptly to document my statement and review the evidence. His concern was evident as he remarked, "This isn't just an HOA dispute. We're looking at breaking and entering, theft, property damage, and potentially reckless endangerment." The officer collected all pertinent evidence, including security footage and photographs of the damage. An inventory of the missing items revealed losses exceeding $1,000. 2 hours later, I received an update. The police had confronted Linda at her residence and recovered all my safety equipment in her garage. Linda defended her actions by claiming she was merely enforcing HOA regulations and had confiscated prohibited items. However, the authorities were unswayed. Linda was arrested and charged with breaking and entering, theft, property damage, and, most gravely, reckless endangerment. The latter charge was particularly serious, given her deliberate removal of essential fire safety equipment, a reckless act akin to disabling the brakes on someone's car. News of Linda's arrest spread rapidly through Maplewood Grove. An emergency HOA meeting was convened by the vice president. The following week. This time, it wasn't held in the middle of a weekday afternoon, but at 7 p.m., in the community clubhouse, an hour accessible to everyone, especially the working residents who'd long been excluded by Linda's scheduling tactics. The room was packed. Neighbors who I'd only ever seen in passing now stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces marked with equal parts curiosity, frustration, and relief. Apparently, my ordeal had struck a chord, and I was far from alone. Once the floor opened for public comment, a line formed. One by one, residents came forward, recounting their own run-ins with Linda Morrison's overzealous brand of rule enforcement. A retired couple described how she had uprooted their rose bushes because they weren't aesthetically consistent with community guidelines. A single mother fought back tears as she described how Linda tossed out her daughter's memorial swing after claiming it hadn't been pre-approved. Another neighbor said his patriotic-themed holiday decorations were thrown into the trash bin while he was at work. A Vietnam veteran recounted the day Linda entered his backyard to remove a bench he'd built to honor his late wife, simply because it wasn't part of the HOA's approved outdoor furniture list. By the end of the evening, the atmosphere had shifted from resentment to unity. The board, finally seeing the full scope of Linda's behavior, and likely sensing the community's collective anger, unanimously voted to permanently remove her from the HOA presidency. They also passed a motion to review and revise all HOA rules implemented during her term. It was the first time in years many of us felt hopeful that our voices mattered. I was asked to speak, and I did. I explained my background, my intentions, and the reason I had installed the lockbox in the first place. I showed them images from the fire station, including national firefighter safety recommendations that supported such devices. I reminded them that it could have been anyone, any of them, and that no one should be punished for trying to make their home safer. The board followed up by issuing a formal, written apology to me on behalf of the HOA. They also offered to cover all repair costs related to the damage Linda had caused, including replacing the lockbox, repairing the siding, reinstalling the fire safety equipment, and even repainting the front door where she had placed that obnoxious violation sticker. As for Linda Morrison, her legal troubles were far from over. After her arrest, she had been released on bail, but the conditions of her release were strict. She was ordered to stay at least 100 feet away from my property and was barred from participating in any HOA activities or contacting any residents of Maplewood Grove, except through legal counsel. According to court records, shared discreetly with me by a neighbor who worked at the clerk's office. These terms were later expanded after she was caught glaring at a group of HOA members from her car outside the community center during a scheduled meeting. Her real estate agency, where she worked as a listing agent, put her on unpaid administrative leave pending the outcome of the charges. Evidently, the optics of employing someone who broke into a firefighter's home and removed life-saving equipment didn't sit well with their corporate values or their clients. Linda's defense lawyer attempted to argue that she was acting in her official capacity as HOA president. But during the preliminary hearing, the judge made his stance very clear. HOA presidents are not law enforcement, he stated. They are not above the law, nor do they have the authority to enter private residences or endanger lives under the guise of code enforcement. That was when Linda lost control. In the middle of the courtroom, in front of the judge, attorneys, and nearly a dozen witnesses, she exploded. Her face turned crimson, and she shrieked, "This is my neighborhood. I make the rules here." The courtroom fell into stunned silence, followed by the judge's cold, measured words. "Ms. Morrison, you are now held in contempt of court." She spent the night in a holding cell. That moment, the sheer disbelief on her face as she was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, was the first time I saw Linda Morrison realize the truth. Authority does not equal immunity. Her trial was scheduled for 3 months later, and during that time, Maplewood Grove underwent a quiet transformation. The mood was lighter. Conversations at the mailbox were no longer hushed. Children played more freely on front lawns. Neighbors who had once retreated behind curtains now exchanged greetings on their porches. The board enacted a community forum initiative, allowing residents to vote on proposed rule changes. They scrapped dozens of policies Linda had enforced and returned the community to a more common-sense form of governance. It was almost as if we were waking up from a collective nightmare. I received dozens of thank you notes and personal visits from neighbors who appreciated that someone had finally stood up. I hadn't set out to be a hero. I just didn't want to be bullied in my own home. But somehow, my small act of resistance had become a catalyst for change. When Linda's criminal trial finally arrived, she was found guilty on all counts: breaking and entering, theft, property damage, and reckless endangerment. The judge sentenced her to 18 months probation, mandatory community service, a restraining order, and financial restitution to be paid directly to me. She was also banned from serving on any HOA board in the state. I used the compensation to install a state-of-the-art fire safety system, not just for me, but for several elderly neighbors who couldn't afford upgrades of their own. I figured if anything good came from this, it should extend beyond just fixing what was broken. Linda eventually moved out of Maplewood Grove. No one threw her a going-away party. No one waved. Her house sold quietly, and a new family moved in. A young couple with 2 kids and a golden retriever who named their mailbox Lucky. And so life went on. The lawns remained green. The pool stayed clean. And for the first time in a long time, Maplewood Grove felt like a neighborhood again, not because we got rid of Linda Morrison, but because we finally stood up for each other. As I sat on my porch one quiet evening, watching the sun dip below the rooftops, I realized something. Peace doesn't come from the absence of conflict. It comes from the courage to confront it.